What's going on, Port fans? Welcome back to another video on the channel, and today we're going to be previewing Showdown 58. It's Port Adelaide versus Adelaide. This Saturday night is a Crows home game at the Adelaide Oval, and it's going to be a wet, wild, and ferocious showdown, and one to expect nothing but an absolute bloodbath, I think. Yeah, obviously it's a big game for the state. Everyone comes together to be separated in half and cheer on your team like no problem. But it is unfortunately going to be a bit one-sided, I think, with Port Adelaide being heavily undermanned and not being in the form that us as fans would like. And we know that it hasn't been the greatest of years for Port in particular, but Port Adelaide coming into this game still in 11th place. We've conquered up 8 wins for the year and looking to at least salvage some momentum going into the back end of the year. I know we've got a very, very tough run. We've still got the likes of Geelong and Fremantle and Gold Coast to come. Carlton as well. It will be our last month. So, yeah, a tough run home. It's hard to see where a win will come, especially with the injuries that we do have. And you're coming up against an Adelaide Crows outfit who have Thilthorpe, Walker, Fogarty, Dawson, Keys, Rankin. Down back, they've got Keane. They've got so many players in form. Michael Laney, Dan Curtin. These players that have been, so good for a lot of weeks now, and they're all just so in form. The whole team is just in form, and it's really scary because you come up against that sort of formidable outfit, and it's like far out. How do we get an edge? How do we find an edge? We're missing some key pillars ourselves. We've had Galea out, Jason Horn-Francis. We might get Rosie back this week, which will be a very, very big boost. And we're coming off a loss to the Hawks, which is a game that was in the wet. It's tough, and you feel it in the body. And the Crows have come off a pretty easy Gold Coast win. They do have a 6-day turnaround. You find the edge. Find the small edge, and with a showdown, anything can happen. It is, it always is that way. We saw this year, earlier in the year, Port Adelaide got pumped by 80 points the week before and nearly pulled off a massive upset against the Crows in the showdown. This year it was only a 5-point loss. And this one, I hate away showdowns. I generally can't stand them. One, because it's just, you just feel like everything's against you, and it's feel like you're suffocating. And it's like once the momentum hits the Crows, if they get 2 or 3 goals in a row, their run, you can't stop them. It's just, that's it. And that's been happening in every away showdown at the Adelaide Oval. All I can think about, even the first away showdown we lost, and we were top of the ladder. Even the rounds, I think it was round 19 or 20 in 2017, we lost by 80 points in the wet. It's these kinds of games that I just sit here, I'm like, far out. I don't know where we get the edge from. And I then try and see where we can find. I think the main key points for this week's game is stopping momentum of the Crows. If we can kick a couple of goals on the run, on the go, and not let them have that momentum, I think that will be a key standing point. I think we've got to kick straight. I think that's another thing that's very crucial this week. Every opportunity we get, we've got to take this week. We can suffocate the Crows in the way we play. We can be ferocious at the footy. It's not about who's on the park. It's how you play. And I think that's what's going to be the difference in a showdown. It always is. Seen in the past, things can happen, and they're just about the players that are on the park. I have 2 showdowns in mind that I've thought about this week. It's round 16, 2008. It was in the wet at Amy. It was one of the lowest showdown crowds ever, and Port Adelaide won by 12 points. It was a game where the Crows were, they lost I think 4 in a row at the time, but they were sitting in the top 4, and Port were only 4 wins for the year. They come out and they win in a very big showdown. It was a ferocious performance. Chad Corns and Treadray and these alikes were dominating, and Daniel Pearson and these names were thrown around. David Roden. These players, they put in the effort. You had the star power on the park, but it was the players like, I look at the lesser knowns that really developed into good performances that day and really showcased, and that's what outshined the Crows' star power. And then you look at 2006, round 22, I think it was, round 21. Port Adelaide were, I think in the bottom 4. The Crows had just been, they're top of the ladder, and they were dominating. They were absolutely flying in 2006, and this Showdown we came in and we had players like Greg Bentley, Ryan Willits. I'm throwing in names that were NPCs of Port Adelaide. Real obscure players, and we played a ferocious style of footy and just kept attacking, and the momentum kept going. And I think in these types of atmospheres and these types of performances, you do get them. And I can see the momentum, I can see the motivation. And the motivation would be, right, it's Ken's last Showdown. Love Ken or hate Ken, whatever party you're in, it is Ken's last Showdown. You want to find an edge? There it is. Ken's an emotional coach. He knows how to get the players up for an emotional performance. And this could be one. This definitely could be a performance that could make or break the rest of the year. And I think if there's one game you want to win for the rest of the year, it's got to be this one. Looking at the changes this week, I can see a couple happening. I think Rosie will be back in. I would love to see Jack Whitlock play, but I don't think he will. I think the weather will dictate Jack Whitlock not playing, unfortunately. I don't think Ken is in the mood to really debut players in a Showdown in the wet, so I don't think we'll see him play. I think maybe you'll see maybe a Finlayson come back in, which is just not a selection I'd make, but could be the case. Joe Berry, Moraes, these types of players could be players to come in. It's really hard to tell when you come off a game like last week. So many did underperform, but it was also a very wet and ugly game, so we'll see. Dylan Williams was a sub last week and didn't play amazingly well for the 30 minutes he was on, but it was hard to tell whether or not Ollie Lord has been out of form. So it'll be interesting to see if you give him the task of something. And it's really hard to see what selections you'd make. If I was going to make a change, I think Mead comes out for Rosie. I think that's a straight swap. Rosie seems to be good to go, so I think that's your one change. And from there, it just depends on what structure you want to have. And I don't think we bring in a tool to really dictate whether or not they play. They play a three tools, with the down back. So they might rest Tex this week as well, just with the weather. Who knows? I know they're lining up for these 300th at the end of the year, but or against Collingwood, sorry. So we'll see. But yeah, if I'm going to pick a game to really just throw everything at it, it's this one. Am I going to tip the Power? No, I'm not going to tip Port. I've tipped the Crows, but I can sense something. Really. There's just a boil over. There's got to be something that happens this year that is just a massive upset, and this could be it. So Port fans, let me know in the comments below your thoughts about this game. It's a massive opportunity for us to cause a boil over, to really change the directory of the Crows season. And we do have the star power there. With the Bergman on Dawson operation, can Georgiades kick a few? Does Willie Rioli come back in? All these questions and a lot of pressure on this club. Port Adelaide very easily can become the forgotten football club of the AFL when it's not doing well. And I think if there's ever a statement to be made, it's this one in this Showdown. And a Showdown should be a prime time standalone game. I don't understand why they've thrown this at 7:40 p.m. on a Saturday night either. It's disgraceful, to be honest, but it is what it is. It happens, and the AFL likes to play with its own fixtures and make sure that the big clubs are getting it, even though they suck. And I'm looking at you, Carlton and Essendon. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new, for plenty more Port Adelaide and AFL content to come your way. Showdown week is always massive, and I look forward to seeing you on Saturday night. My name's Anthony, and as always, count the pair.